Welcome to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement, a podcast where we dive into the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of the law enforcement officer.
Minor injury accident to the 2700 block of 156th Avenue Northeast.
All right, welcome back to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. I am your host, Vern Phillips, and today on the show we've got Jay Nix. I've known Jay for a number of years, and he'll tell you that he's got a better beard than me, but I don't know. Right now he probably does, but no, it came in pretty good. But I'm going to turn it over to Jay, let him introduce himself, give a background of who he is and kind of what he's doing now, and then we'll just jump into some conversation. So, Jay, I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I know we've been trying to get this lined up for a while, and we're both busy, so I appreciate the invite for sure. I'm a fan of the podcast, and I definitely appreciate the invite. It means a lot. So, yeah, like Vern said, my name's Jay Nix. I am a resident here of Ocala, Florida, and I'm in the process of retiring from the Marion County Sheriff's Office, where I spent almost the last 26 years. I'm just shy of that. I am retiring from there as the K-9 unit commander and kind of transitioning out of the first responder and law enforcement world to, kind of entrepreneurship, run a dog training business. I also serve on the board of a nonprofit organization called K-9 United, which is a national nonprofit that supports law enforcement K-9 teams all over the country. I'm a part of a training group that we do a lot of traveling and teaching, seminars, conferences, stuff like that. So I spend a lot of my time still very much involved in the law enforcement side of things, but now more of the consulting and training aspect on that side is, kind of a way to feed my passion without having to work for the government anymore.
Yeah, that's why you got the sweet beard.
That's right. Yeah, and that's why I said the beard came as soon as the government couldn't tell me what to do anymore.
Well, I mean, for those that aren't familiar with you, I mean, you've got an extensive background working K9. So, of your almost 26 years, how many of that was spent either working with K9s or working in K9 specifically?
Pretty much the majority of it. I spent the first year and 11 months on patrol. And then I had a couple little spots in between where I, worked in investigations and on patrol for a really short amount of time. But in one form or fashion, and whether it was actually handling a dog, training dogs, part of that, I've been pretty much the majority of my career has been, working with or training the dogs.
Yeah,
And the
and with,
handlers,
I mean,
of course. Yeah.
yeah, and with almost 26 years, let's just we'll just 20 years or 26 years. What did you do to keep yourself, just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually just balanced? Like, what was it that you did or learned to do
Yeah.
throughout your career to keep yourself
Oh,
just, even killed?
yeah. I think the proper way to say that is, how did you get yourself out of it multiple times
Yeah,
repeatedly? Because we're never in that aspect. You know, uh, always we are aware that we should be, and we are aware that that's where God wants us to be, but we're always not good at keeping ourselves in that spot. And for me, I was very fortunate. I grew up in a family and a household that my mom made faith a priority, and uh, my I had a praying mama, and praying mamas. I'm a big believer that will keep you on the
oh
straight
yeah,
and narrow, even if it's making you extremely uncomfortable. Because the fact that the word that talks about God leaving the 99 to chase you down, I believe that's because it's a hidden message behind it of praying mamas. So because there's been plenty of my time that I fell uh, to places where I probably shouldn't have been, and allowing myself to get to dark places and allowing myself to get into that. But I always knew that it was just a simple arm's reach away for me. And I would love to tell you that I was successful in making my entire career without getting in that dark area, but that's not true. Between, trauma, between, self-made, trauma,
yeah,
things that we endure, both physically and mentally, But I always had that in the background where I knew that no matter how hard I fell, that safety blanket was there for me, and it was never used as a crutch, as an opportunity to, or as a way to say, hey, like I can venture out and kind of do what I want to do and not have to worry about that, because obviously that's a terrible mindset to be in. But you find yourself in those positions, and a lot of times we allow shame and guilt and fear to prevent us from recognizing those moments and getting ourselves back on track. And I think for me, it was the willingness to say, "Hey, look, this isn't where I belong," and recognizing it in that moment, and then working to get out of it. Um, you know, my my faith has always been something that I've been proud of wearing it. I don't always wear it the way I should, and I have not always done a great job of that. But I feel like I've always done it real. Um, and it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. But it does mean that I don't have any doubt that when people see me, they see God, his hand in that work and the stuff that we're doing. And I try to give him the glory for that on a regular basis, whether it be publicly or even just in private conversations. I do have a lot of opportunity to mentor and speak to young cops and, um, law enforcement professionals that are out there doing this job every day. And, some of them are in some really bad places. And some of them have been through a lot of bad stuff. And I've been there and I've been through that. And I've been able to use those moments to help those guys get back off. So, I would love to say it was through my own power, but I think it was by grace of God and a praying mama. That's really what put me in a position to where I knew I could always return back to that home base uh, anytime I found myself in the dark area or in the shadows.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, there's a lot there that we could just dive into the whole praying mama thing and probably talk about that for
That's a
a whole
fact.
hour. But I mean, also just the faith aspect. I think that that's something that a lot of people don't really consider, of how your faith just makes you more resilient as an individual. Just people who have faith, right? People who are who are believers. Just I mean, and you see it, and I see it. They just are more resilient. They're more pliable. They're more elastic. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's any more comfortable than anybody else, right? Because
No.
it still sucks. There's the
Yep.
stuff you go through, the stuff you see, it all still sucks. But there's just a more there's more peace there, and you have kind of a great understanding. And there's just so many people that I know that are good, solid believers that are in law enforcement, and they're just like, man, I don't know how people do it and don't have that faith component, and don't have that, that backing that gives them that reassurance each and every day. Um, because like you said, I mean, we all might not live up to that standard like we should, but we try to do each and every day, right? We try to come out and we try to strive to be more Christ-like, and there's days that we completely fail. Um,
Yeah.
you know, every single one of us, right? I mean, even in my role, like, right, I should probably be a little bit, you know, more on top of that, but no, I fail too, and that's just the way
Yeah.
it is. We all are gonna fail. We're gonna, but it's just that difference of getting up every day and continue to strive to be more Christ-like and to give Him the glory, give Him the honor, and just rest in His assurance that we may not know or understand what's going on, but we can rest that ultimately He's in control, and that should bring us to peace and just builds upon our resilience as individuals. So
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think to you, like to your point, you're talking about your position, especially at the agency, I think when you're dealing with, especially when you're dealing with first responders and you're dealing with guys that are in that alpha role type, position, they're the personalities that it takes to do this job really well. You know, I think guys like that relate to guys that are more real instead of this persona.
yeah,
I know for me, the more impacting moments that I've had influence over somebody was not when I was, maybe saying just the right things or preaching it. It came back full circle to me when somebody said to me, "Hey, you had no idea, but the influence that you had over me during those times where we weren't even trying to be Christ-like or trying to be this person that, we sometimes feel like we're obligated to be. It was in those quiet moments. I'll give you an example. I was up in Virginia with a group of other business owners that are in the dog training community, and we were having kind of like a collaborative type. Uh, time where we're spending some time together, talking about business, talking about, how everybody's doing things. And there's a couple from out in California that great couple. They were a military couple. They were a law enforcement couple. They've got out of law enforcement and they're running a dog training business out there. And we were up there in the DC area, and we spent several days with them. And during that time, we went to meals, we went to parks together, we went to some of the monuments, we spent time with them, just because we really kind of hit it off with them, and just good people. He was a longtime canine guy. Uh, his career path had a lot of similarities to mine. The wife was a military person, went into law enforcement, was not a fan, went into dispatch, and they, kind of worked their way out of that, and now they run that business. But we spent several days with them, and it was not a, faith-based type, uh, you know, uh, training we were at, or whatever you want to call it, like this group setting that we were in. But later on, when we got back that week, and him and I really kind of got to build our bond together a little bit closer while we were there. And he shoots me a really nice long message afterwards and say, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that you and your wife had a, pretty significant impact on my wife and I, kind of getting our heads back in the game and getting our faith back where it belonged in church, and, back in our Bibles and praying together during the day." And he said, your influence over us was simply multiple moments where you would make reference to things about your faith, but you would also pray at every meal. Like we have a rule: we pray at every meal. You ask any of the canine guys that's ever been on the team with me, those boys will tell you, like, Nikki would get onto them in a heartbeat. Like, we break bread, you better take your hat off and get ready to say blessing. And it's just been a rule in my house. It's just the way we do it. No matter where we're at, what we're doing, no matter who we're in front of, we're doing it. But that little act, that little moment of things that we do as something that we say, hey, this is who we are. Um, it opened their eyes and opened their hearts, and it started, the conviction kind of fell on them, because it wasn't that they didn't know, but they had kind of strayed from that. And as a result, it built our relationship a lot stronger. And that was a huge impact for me and Nikki, to just hear that our day-to-day walk was what was influential, not the words that were coming out of our mouth,
Mhm.
not the, you know, sometimes we think we have to have, Bible verses memorized, and we got to spew those out at the right moment. We got to have just the right thing to say. And, but I think it's our true core of who we are, and the changes that we make, and um, the decisions that we make, those lines in the sand that we draw, and we just say we're not willing to cross. And when we are in those moments that are really impactful, people are paying attention. And I think that's probably the bigger message: is people are always watching.
Yeah.
I have running this business. I've got multiple employees, and we make it clear that God is at the front of this, and we have expectations for them, but we lead them through that same faith, and it has in turn built a relationship with all of our employees that you know the same thing. Like, they all see that, and they have faith in that. And I'll try to find the text message, because that was really impactful for me, and another one of these organic moments of um, just kind of that testimony of, it's not always about what you say. Sometimes it's a deeper thing, and about the way you respond and the way you just carry yourself in those quiet moments that make a huge impact. And it was one of my employees, who happens to be a law enforcement person as well, um, sends this message, and it was basically um, a reel, Instagram reel, talking about leading, um, and pushing people forward, right? Like, trying to help them advance, and keeping God in the center of that. And that this person wrote this, set this reel, and said, this is us. I feel like this is the kind of team that we are, and I'm grateful for it. Nikki's response was, I love this. Thank you for sharing. And one of the things I said, I couldn't agree more. I said, so grateful that for this team, and that God has his hands over it. We are all doing, uh, we are doing, and we will be better because of it. We will be better for those who serve because of it, who we serve because of it. I couldn't be more proud of this team. And I pray God keeps pushing each one of us daily in that mindset. And then I shared that text, and it was a couple of the texts between them and the employees, kind of confirming that with this bigger group of entrepreneurs that I'm in. And I basically said, I shared this with them um, for multiple reasons. One, being the recognition of how blessed we are to have the team that we do, but also to be an encouragement to those owners to be leaders of their people, foster an environment where this is the standard, and to remind them that they should be praying over their team and their business daily. So I said, thank you again for the reminder. And she said, yeah, that's some good stuff. Definitely an affirmation for all of us and for what we're doing. That wasn't because we're holding Bible study in the middle of, the way we're carrying our business. It was because of the influence that we have over each other in those quiet moments and don't realize it. And I think going back to your statement of like, sometimes I feel like I should probably do better, but I think those real moments where the people that need you the most, they see that you have tough times. They see that you have low moments, and being transparent and not acting like we've got it all together all the time is what helps us come alongside people and not feel like we're above or in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can I can tell you for sure, Laurie will absolutely tell anybody that I do not have it all put together.
Yeah, they'll snitch us out in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, and they'll I mean, but that's that's the fortunate part, that I'm thankful for is having her in my life that, she keeps me accountable too, right? She keeps me on my toes, and you know, she'll tune me up when I need to be tuned up. She's like,
Yep.
okay, hey, what's going on? What do you need to do? Let's let's get this sorted, and kind of
Right.
come on, let's go.
That's
Um,
it.
but no, and that's awesome, and I'm glad to see and hear, what you've got going on there with your team and kind of this next chapter that you're stepping into, because I think that's important. I mean, because it's also an indication of who you are, right? It hasn't stopped. It's just transitioned to this next stage that you're in.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, I think sometimes it's just holding that space, right? It's not about what you're saying. It's not about having a scripture to share, or sometimes it's just holding that space. And there's a lot of time, in my role that I just hold space, right? Um, and that's hard for people, because if there's no conversation happen, or they don't know what they say, that can be awkward for people, right? They're like,
Right.
now we're just here, we're holding space, it's quiet, nobody's talking, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's
That's
it's
a
okay
fact.
to it's okay to just sit there and hold that space, not say anything, and just be present. um
Right.
you don't always have to have the first words or the last words or the most eloquent words. Sometimes you just got to be there, and you just got to hold that space. um
That's right.
so I think that's important. And I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of stuff that we could dive into and pull from. But I mean, when you think back over your career, and some of those difficult moments that you've been in, if you're willing to share, like, what was one of those that you had to walk through that was difficult, but you got on the other side, and how did you get on the other side of that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, I've had a ton of uh really great highlights in my career, and then I've had some pretty deep lows in my career. And like I said earlier, some of them were just cost of doing business, and some of them were, you know, self-sabotaging in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to say uh specifically which one. They were all impactful for different reasons. I I think the important message to your question and your point is, like, there are times where you feel like you are at the bottom. Like, you just feel like it can't get any worse than it is right now. Um, and in this career and this career choice and this profession, the outside world looks at that as something that we deal with that is so crazy, right? The danger of it, um, the stress, the trauma that we see, um, one day I was wrapping up my days, and this is a time when I was just working as a sergeant on patrol for a short amount of time. And one of the deals was, is, as a sergeant on patrol, you had to respond to every natural death or any death, period, to just basically make sure that they're calling this correctly. And, it's not something that they're missing anything as a young patrol officer to make sure that we're, on the right track. So as a sergeant, you had to respond to every death call that was in your zone. And I was supposed to be getting off work, and I was a little bit running behind, and Nikki had called me and she said, "Hey, I'm just checking on you, making sure you're okay." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm just wrapping up this death call." I said, "It's like the fifth one today." And I said, "But I should be out of here in just a few minutes and I'll be headed home." So she's like, "Okay, love you, goodbye." Hung up the phone, and I walked in the door. She was standing in the kitchen. She was kind of getting dinner ready, and she just kind of just stopped dead in her tracks. And she looked at me and she's like, "That's not normal, right?" To do what? She's like, "That's not normal." I said, "What's not normal, babe?" And she's like, "When I talked to you on the phone, you said that's my fifth death call today." She's like, "It's not normal for anybody to see five dead people in one day." She's like, "It's not normal for anybody to see five dead people in their entire life, much less in one day." And I remember thinking in that moment, like, that was such an impactful thing that she said, because we just get so used to carrying this heavy weight all the time that you don't realize how heavy that weight is because you just get so good at carrying it. Um, August 27th was the day that I turned in all my stuff, vehicle, everything, uniform. I turned it all in, turned over that department phone, which, by the way, was my favorite part of the entire process. But um, August 26th of last year, I turned in my last, all my equipment, and walked away. And that first couple of weeks after I was gone, and even though I'm still technically attached to the agency, but my sole role right now is dog training for them, and mentoring and making sure that Justin's, who's the supervisor, is taking over my role as Canine Unit Commander, is has everything he needs to be successful. Um, for the first couple of weeks, man, like I walked around feeling very weird. Like I felt like I was doing something wrong. I felt like I was going to get in trouble. Um, like I felt like I jokingly talk about Ricky Bobby from Talladega Nights. Like I don't know what to do with my hands because I felt this massive weight that I carried for so long lifted off my shoulders. Now I'll pause and say, like, that wasn't like a stress induced type weight that I shouldn't say it's not stress induced because it is, but like I had a great job. Like my position at the agency was, I could not have left that agency in a better place of where I wanted to be and happy with my position. Like that was what I was most passionate about. I worked for a fantastic administration from my lieutenant to the sheriff that I never didn't feel supported in that role. They gave me a mission and they gave me every means to complete it, and I did. They were really good about telling me they were proud of me. They were really good about supporting me. They never told me no. Um, so I feel like I left as one of the few that get to leave on top, like the few that get to leave really feeling like um, I was fulfilled in my role.
Yeah.
But I still felt this giant weight lifted off of me. But I didn't understand it at first. Like it didn't make sense to me at first. It was a very strange feeling. And I kept telling Nikki, like I just feel wrong. Like I feel like something's wrong. And it took me a while to realize, like, you just don't know the weight that we carry until you don't have to carry it anymore. Law enforcement, and I think this goes for all first responder type positions, whether it's fire department, nursing, even educators and teachers, but that first response role, right? Especially when you're in that first responder role of that you're the first on scene type first responder. Um, we do a really good job at making it normal to carry that much, load and stress. But the truth is it's not. Right. Like when Nikki
Yeah.
said that to me, it was a very eye-opening moment for me because she was just being very honest and she was being very, just open, and like that, like I got off the phone thinking to myself, like, he just told me that I'll be home in a few minutes, but I'm on my fifth dead person call for the day. Like she's like, I've never seen one dead person. And you saw five today. Now, this isn't even like the trauma of the bad ones that we've seen. I had a 15-year-old boy when I was a fairly young deputy commit suicide 15 feet in front of me by shooting himself in the head. Like that's a heavy load as a
Yeah.
really, really young canine handler. My canine shift partner, Brian Litz, was shot and killed, and I responded to the scene, like seeing him laying there lifeless. Like that's stuff that no 24-year-old kid should ever have to carry, ever,
Yeah.
period. Like there's nothing. There's nothing that you can do to prepare a 24-year-old kid to watch somebody they looked at as a mentor laying on the ground, lifeless, not an ounce of blood left in his body, his dog barking in the background. Uh, there's nothing you can do to prepare for some of that trauma. Um, and then when you think about really kind of how crappy we are at preparing people the best we can, so we do a really good job at learning to carry stress. But that's just because we do a good job at learning to carry stress doesn't mean that it's good that we do it.
Yeah.
And that's been part of my, testimony and mission as I've transitioned out of law enforcement, and I still travel all over the country teaching. I was just teaching a class in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I had probably 200 people in the classroom and instructors and canine handlers, and I was talking to them, and I talked about this weight that nobody prepares you to really carry. And then nobody prepares you for the moment that you don't carry it anymore. Like what that feels like and that realization that I've been dealing with some really screwed up stuff for a really long time, you know? And then there's a lot of guys that get in this profession and they just feel stuck, right? Like, um, and there's guys that are surviving in it. They're not really thriving in it. They're surviving in it. And that's a dangerous place to be with this profession already having the potential to put you in such a bad place to begin with. Um, and listen, I have no bones about it. Like I say it quite often that law enforcement as a whole, and like I said, I was very fortunate at our agency, but law enforcement as a whole, we do a really good job at teaching our officers that they can't survive without law enforcement.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's not true. That's
And it's
probably the
and it's not
biggest.
healthy. And it's not
No, it's
healthy.
terrible. And
It's
that's
not
probably
healthy.
the biggest shame on us moment for me is the moments where I realize like we do a really good job at making them feel like they are worthless without us and they can't survive without us. And guys stay stuck for so long, right? Like I have people still today. I did, like I said, between 25 and 26 years, and I still have people think I'm crazy for leaving. Like, no, I did my part.
Yeah.
My role is when God opened this door, I kicked it off the hinges. Like I'll never forget. Right before I left, I had a conversation with the sheriff, and I think there might have been some worry that I was unhappy or whatever. That's not the case at all. Like I did my job. I ran that race. Um, I ran it the best I could, and uh, but I think so many times, like a lot of these guys feel stuck. It's not really their calling, but they get trapped and they get this feeling, and then they get themselves to a dark, low place when they don't know how to get out. And I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors and now be mentors to some other people of shedding that mess and of like you're very marketable outside of law
Mm.
enforcement, and you just got to be willing to take that leap of faith and look to see where that market lands because I could give you example after example of guys that felt stuck that are now are gone and doing things that they never had dreamed they would have been able to do because law enforcement made them marketable in a way that they never would have. But we just get stuck because a lot of times these admins and different people, they make us feel like this is all you're good at doing. This is the only thing you're worthy of. And that's not the case. That would be my message to guys. Like, don't ever get to a place where you feel like you're burnout and you're just stuck and this is all you can do. And then they agency hop and they go, listen, the grass is never greener on the other side in that profession,
Yeah.
right?
If
Like
it's
it's
got people,
just not.
it's got problems,
That's it.
right?
I
That's
promise you. And you know, I, I've made a couple posts recently that, and you can go back and look at my social media, within the last couple of months about that.
yeah. There was one specifically I I read and I'm like, Oh,
Yeah.
leave that one right there.
Yeah, Jay wrote that about me, and I know I got some phone calls from guys like, "Hey, was that because of this?" And I'm like, "No," but if their guilty conscience is getting to them, then that's on them,
Just
right? Like,
you're like, no, that's just
um,
what's on my heart. That's just what I need to
yeah,
share.
yeah,
So
I think that we can do a better job, right? Because I can tell you there was some lows in my career, and there was plenty of times in those lows where I felt completely alone, and that's not true,
yeah,
but in the moment you felt it.
yeah,
Um, and I think. Uh, that would be my thing is the impact of that on young men and young women and listen, not just young, but old dudes too, right? Like uh it's extremely important to understand that uh this is a profession, and I believe you need to be professional to do it and do it well and effectively, but it is not the end, and it is not the ending, and it can be abruptly stopped, and you can't be um manipulated by people in that program that you aren't marketable outside of that, and that there's not more options out there, and that retirement is everything. It's just not the case, right? Like I think that we need to do a better job in that arena, and kind of we talk about being a brother's keeper and stuff like that, but I don't think we always do a fantastic job of making ourselves available to uh, be vulnerable where when we are in those lows that we're willing to speak up and go, hey, I'm in a low, or even be able to recognize when they're in those lows. And I think the only thing that really kept me from getting in a darker place than I did at those low times was, again, family, my wife for sure. um, there was times in my career that my wife should have said, I'm done with this dude, I'm out, right? Like,
yeah,
but you know uh, she tells a story. There was a time where we were dealing with one of my really low points, and I was struggling, and it was a struggle for her. And she said, I heard it one day, as clear as you and I are talking right now. God saying, this isn't about you, and it was because she was willing. She was obedient, and she heard that message of it says not about you, it's about him. You just keep loving him and let me help him through it. Uh, our marriage is stronger today than it has ever been and ever could be. But it was because we were willing to deal with those lows in a way that brought us closer together. And we in those moments of lows, we turned to Him in our faith, um, and then not only did God bring us through those moments, but He also made those moments shareable and impactful to others, so that they were beneficial to them in the dark seasons that they were going through. And I don't take those moments for granted at all. So, uh, you know, I know your question was what is it was a specific moment, but I think um, there was a culmination of moments that I was able
yeah.
to work my way through not because of what I was capable of doing or willing to do, but it was, that foundation of faith that I was able to lean on in those moments.
Yeah, and I think that's important to highlight. I mean, um, there's so much in the last several minutes that you talked about that, man, we could like pull on and just and spend another, 45 minutes just talking about that. I mean, but I mean the one, like I said, there's so many things. I mean, just from you talking about, seeing, five dead bodies in one day, and I think he was like, That's not normal. Like, and it's not right." And and you probably heard me talk about this in IST, where I talk about, hey, the average citizen experience is 2 to 3, right? But somebody in law enforcement, a 20-year career, I mean, it's well over 188
Yeah.
critical incidents, traumatic events you're going to experience. And like what you said, there's a lot of things that we do well. And one of those things is indoctrinating the next generation, right, into the same habit, the same, bull jive that we spew about, you know, kind of taking it, stowing it, don't, not putting your hand up saying like, man, hey, I'm I'm not doing very well with this.
Yeah.
And and that's when people get to the point where they feel isolated, right? Because they're like, man, nobody else is saying anything about this call, and I'm the only one that's like, holy crap, like what, like like nobody else is going to say anything, so I guess I'm not going to say anything. So right, we just indoctrinate the next generation to do the same thing and to react the same way, and to look at all of those events the same, to the point where you get to 25, 30 years in, and you get people who are just burnt out, they're disgruntled, they're done, right? They're shot because
Hmm.
they just because of the weight of it, right? I mean, the average life expectancy of somebody in law enforcement 59 years of age, and that's because of the toll that the profession takes, and the lack of, I mean, let's just say like self-care, right? I mean, yeah, people go out and they exercise and do all that, but that's only part of it. That's only one piece of it. There's so much more to that. And the other thing is people feeling like this is the only thing. And I've talked about this before. It's like, hey, if this is your calling, that's great, but have something else also. Like, this
That's
doesn't have to
right.
be your only. It doesn't have to be your only calling. Like, have something else that you're invested in outside of this profession, because one day you could come in and it's all gone.
Hmm.
And then what do you do? Then you're left, you know, feeling like, well, what do I do? This is the only thing. This is all I can do. And to your point, it's not, right. There's so many other things that you can do, that you can go out and do.
Yeah.
And even for myself, and I tell us people all the time that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until the Lord tells me otherwise.
That's right.
You um, and I feel pretty fortunate about what I've been able to be allowed to do, and kind of bring to the table. And I feel like the more we do, the better we'll prepare our people. But man, there's still so much more we could be doing, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there's just so many things that we miss, or that kind of fall through the cracks. And something that could seem insignificant to us, is a huge roadblock for somebody else. And when they get to the point where they feel like, man, I don't got anybody to talk to. How do I transition this? I don't know how to get on the other side of this. Like, I don't have the support. I don't have, having your faith obviously is a huge component, but having a good social support network outside of the profession is huge, right? Having people that can speak into your life, that can hold that space, that can encourage you, and be that person, um, in those dark moments,
Yeah.
you know is 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 crucial. I mean, so for what I do now, it's different, right? I mean, I'm interacting with people, and I'm dealing, talking with them on the other side of stuff that they've gone through. I'm not so much hands on anymore, as far as seeing things and experiencing things. But you know, but even that, I have to step back myself and say, all right, I need to I, I need to check some of this, right? I need to take some of this, and I need to kind of offload it, because if I don't, I mean, even still, it weighs on you.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, and
No, I agree.
and you get to that, and you get to that point where it's like you gotta do something. You gotta do something for yourself. And I mean, and you got to be able to invest in other people. And like what you're saying, I mean, and you've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but you've already hit on this. But for those that are just coming into the profession, what are uh, three tips that you'd give them, like three specifics, like, hey, you just coming into this career, you know these are the things you need to know.
Yeah, so I think for me, number one is be and stay humble to the reason you started it, right? There's been so many times in my career that I've seen people be upset because they're not in the position they want to be in, or maybe they got passed up on a promotion, or they didn't get selected for this particular position, or they were in that position and got booted out for whatever reason. Like, and it's just like the end of the world, right? Like, I remember all of us when we were in the academy and we first started, we were just passionate about being in the law enforcement profession. It was, we would have done anything to just get to a patrol car in a patrol uniform to answer a call for service. Like that would have been that was all we wanted to accomplish.
Mm.
And then we get in this and we get caught up in the day to day of it. And then we start looking at, oh, I want to be on canine. I want to be on SWAT. I want to be a detective. I want to, right. And then that just starts becoming consuming and it steals your joy and it steals your passion versus saying, hey, look, I'm going to do, my goal is to be the best cop I can be, right? Like to be the best first responder, um, remembering and staying humble to the reason that you started this position, this profession to begin with. I think when you do that, you prevent yourself from being in a place where your joy is stolen. You prevent yourself from being in a place where you allow yourself to be let down over things that you didn't have any control over to begin with, right? So my number one would be stay humble to the reason you started it to begin with. Number two would be don't commit early on that this will be what you're doing for the rest of your life,
Right.
right? And don't allow it to consume you to where it becomes your identity, right? I'll never forget years ago, I was on shift. I stopped in at a Walgreens in Silver Spring Shores and walked in there. I don't remember what I was doing in there. In uniform, canine guy, just walked in there to get. And I remember seeing this deputy. He was a fairly new deputy at the time. He still works here today. He's a supervisor. And I remember running into him, and it's his day off. He works opposite company as me, and he's got his shirt tucked in, a gun on his hip, badge clipped to his belt, wearing his civilian attire, was bat with a but badge was on his belt and everything. And he's pushing his kid in a stroller. And I remember thinking, like, what are you doing? Right? Like, this isn't who you are. It's a profession that you do, and you should do it well. And you should do it professionally, and you should allow that your personal life that be as a representation of that, and your personal life should reflect what you do as a profession as far as your character and your morals. However, this should not consume your identity, right? And I think there's so many times that guys get caught up in this, and then it just lands you in a place down the road for failure because there is an ending to it, right? There's a cutoff date. This is a season in your life, and it will end. And if you spend your whole career making this a identity, when the season ends, you lose your identity. And I've seen a lot of cops end their career and they were somebody, they were something, and they were important. And because they made that their identity, they no longer knew who they were, right? Like they had all of a sudden, they were not who they had made themselves to be. I knew early on I did not want that. Don't get me wrong, people knew I was a cop, but it wasn't because I was out, singing it to the masses every day. Um, but I was proud of my profession and I was proud of what I did as a living, and I've turned that into a way to have a living outside of law enforcement where I no longer have that responsibility and that pressure. However, um, it wasn't who I was. What I wanted to be who I was a husband, a father, a son, a family person, a friend. I didn't just hang out with cops when I in off duty. I didn't, they didn't consume my life. So number two would be don't allow this profession to consume you to where it becomes your identity. Find hobbies, find ways for outlets, have friends that are not cops, have friends that are not first responders. And when you're around them, don't let them haggle you nonstop about being a cop, right? Like make time to be who you are and who God designs you to be. God, yeah, I firmly believe that this is a call-in professional for a lot of us. I have no doubt that my path and being a law enforcement officer was ordained. It was something that I knew I wanted to do when I was young. I followed that and I had a very successful career at the same agency. I never did it anywhere else. And I was grateful for that. But I never wanted it to be who I was in the end. So
Yeah.
that would be my number two caution. Number three would be um, probably this is a very tough career to not do selfishly. And I see it more and more nowadays because as a society, we are selfish.
Yeah.
But I remember a time, man, when this was a family. Like it was camaraderie and we were invested in one another and we cared about each other. We knew each other's families. We knew, everybody's, spouse. We knew their kids' names. We knew like we were at birthday parties. And I'm not saying again, we talked about not, life consuming outside of that, but the people that you work around, like don't be self-centered. Be a giving person, even when it feels like nobody's giving back to you, because you don't do that. The rewards that come from being very helpful and very having that servant heart in this profession, I think is something that is very valuable. But it doesn't just go to the people that we're serving that are calling 911. It goes to the people that you're working with. Pay attention to the people you work around. Don't be selfish, even when they are selfish.
Yeah.
Lead by example, and your stripes on your arm or the bars on your shoulders have nothing to do with being a leader. Because we got plenty of those that don't know anything about leadership. And I've got no bones about saying it, and I'd say it to their face. There are people that mine in your agency that have zero business being in leadership, and they don't know anything about it. They're great at management, and some of them even suck at that. But one some of the greatest compliments I got was from people in our leadership saying, "Man, when you got on scene, like the way that you led the people always kept us from holding our breath until we got on scene because you got on scene and you were a leader, even though it was an informal capacity. You still were that leader, as a deputy and as a canine guy. So I think that would be my third encouragement is don't be selfish, be a leader. And it doesn't matter about your rank or your supervision or your tenure. Uh, you know, be a leader to the people that you work with. And when you see something that seems off, don't just wonder, go confront them. Hey, what's up? You kind of seem a little off. Just
Yeah.
yesterday, there's a boy that is in our canine school that works for another agency. And the last couple of days, he just seemed off. Very charismatic guy. Last couple of days, he just seemed like something wasn't right. One of my employees said, she's like, "Hey, is so and so okay?" And I'm like, it's funny you say that because I felt like over the last couple of days, he just seemed to like, yeah. And he's like, I said something to him, and he was like, "Man, I'm just tired. Like, I'm just really tired." That is translated into, I'm not sleepy tired. You know, he's carrying some stuff, right? And he's dealing with some things. And I think without getting into his business or diving onto it, even personally with him, was I recognized that he just needed a little bit of break and he needed a little bit of grace. And so last night, like 9:45, I texted him and I felt like God was just kind of putting it on my heart. It was late. It was almost 10 o'clock. He might have already been in bed and, preparing to be here early in the morning because he's driving from out of county. And I said, "Hey, tomorrow, I don't want you here. I want you to stay home. I want you to spend some time with your dog. But I want you to go on a walk. I want you to throw the ball. I want you to, get out there and do some obedience. And I want you to spend some time with your wife. I want you to spend some time with your kids. I want you to get some of the stuff that you've been needing to get done around the house. Um, Tomorrow is the day. Your training is at home. That's what I want you to do." And he sent by this message and he said, "Man, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this and how bad I needed this." But it took me paying attention and not being selfish, right? Like I could have been like, "Hey, we got work to do. Right? It doesn't matter to me what you got going on." And that's why I mean, like, there's people that work in this agency that are, and it's all agencies, it's not just here, but we've got
Yeah.
some that are in those leadership roles that do not care. They see guys struggling. They don't care. It's about them. It's about their perception. It's about how they look. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. The problem is there are guys like you and I that can take pushing. And there are other people that can't take it. And when those things hit,
Yeah.
man, sometimes they hit hard. So my third and final one would be a leader, but be a selfless leader and pay attention to the people that you're working around, not just the people that you're serving in the community. Pay attention to those people that you're working with and recognize those moments and be sensitive to that. And if you feel like, man, I probably should say something, don't wait. Speak up and say something because you never know what that impact is going to have on somebody else.
Yeah. And those are all great. I mean, and you know, you you touched on something there, and I haven't posted it yet, but I just wrote a short article on knowledge versus knowledgeable versus competent, right? So it's just because you're knowledgeable doesn't mean you're competent.
That's right.
It's and and there's I put a couple little you know zingers in there, but I'll probably drop that next or tomorrow. But
Good.
um, it's just we got so many young impressionable people coming in, and just they need to hear from people that are going to give them solid sound advice getting into
Yeah.
this career, right? Not just be indoctrinated to what we always do. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's just unfortunately not just in our agency but across the board there are people that just do not, at the end of the day, they just do not care, right?
Yeah.
It's just you're not you're a number, right? You're not individual. You're not a person. You're not a name. You're a
Yep.
number. You're a piece on a board, and you get moved around accordingly to fit the purpose and the need. So, um,
And
just
listen, there's a business purpose behind some of that, right? Like
yes,
this agency has a job and a responsibility, and that job and responsibility has to be at the forefront, but it should never be at the sacrifice of your people, right?
yeah,
Like I just today there was an article released about these firefighters that were involved in this quote unquote hazing. Uh, that to me that right there makes me so angry because some of the very people that were at the top serving these boys up on a silver platter have been involved in things like that. But because of outside pressure, political pressure, things like that, they went down an avenue that they never should. And at the end of this, like you got guys that were charged with armed kidnapping and, all this robbery and kidnapping. And like, come on. Like, you're ruining people's lives because of your out on the stage beating on your chest and you know uh, stepping outside of your lane as you know a politician in our community, um, to you know then you're dragging other people into it. you know uh, we got a county commissioner, and I won't name his name, but he's out there making this a political agenda, and there are people's lives at the end of this, right? Like the sheriff has a humongous responsibility. Like the weight that guy carries, nobody could ever understand unless they're in his position carrying that weight.
yeah,
Eh, So there are decisions that have to be made for the betterment of the agency and the betterment, right? It can't all be about us, right? Like I get that. But there are also people in this organization and in this profession that love that part of it,
yeah,
right? And they get way too much joy out of other people's misery, or way too much opportunity to make someone else look bad to make themselves look better. That is the cancer of this profession. It is not the bad guys. It is not the 5 dead bodies in one day. Those things are heavy enough. But when you have to deal with those that are selflessly pretending to lead, um, that are willing to sacrifice the health and well-being of others, man, I have a tough time with those people.
yeah. And that's, I mean, and that's ultimately that's not healthy for any agency, regardless of what it is. I mean, whether it's in law enforcement, whether it's out in the civilian world. I mean, that's just it's it's not sustainable.
No,
No, for the long term, and but at the end of the day, I mean, it's people like yourself that are willing to stand up and to engage with their people, check in on their people, make sure their people have the resources they need. And there's a lot of people in law enforcement that do that. But it's just like with any other thing, right? A lot of that stuff kind of gets overshadowed by some of the other stuff.
that's right.
And and that's unfortunate. So it just makes, what you do harder. What the other individuals that are in the same position, and it makes what they do harder because they're trying to build upon something, all while somebody else is
Is over there in
pulling
the
it
corner
apart,
trying
and
to
then
tear
you're,
it down. Yeah.
yeah, and you're having to rebuild that back together, and it's frustrating. It we we could chase this we
Oh,
could
buddy,
chase this rabbit
man,
down a hole,
you ain't
man.
kidding, dude.
um
Yeah. That's what
I
I'm saying. I got
there's
so irritated today. I saw that article where they dropped all those charges and those boys pled out to just a misdemeanor battery. Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, do I think they were wrong in what they did? Absolutely. 100% took it too far. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. But because of politics and because of people that were involved that shouldn't have been involved, it got exacerbated. The sheriff's office got drug into it, and we got put in a position where we had to look at it through some black and white lenses. And then, next thing you know, uh, we're the bad guy because we're out here. We should have never been in that position to begin with. Like, it should have been handled. And you know, do I believe those guys probably took it too far? Yes. Do I believe they deserve to have lost their jobs? Yes. But do I believe they should have been charged with felony crimes of robbery and kidnapping? That's to me, that's disrespectful to the state of Florida's statutes of what those crimes are. And shame on the people that are, you know, pushing this agenda. But at the end of the day, I was reading the article today and it talked about the judge asking the victim, like, do you believe that this plea agreement is fair? And he's like, 100% I do, because it never should have gotten to this point to begin with. And then immediately people are responding on social media going, there's no justice in Marion County. Here it is again, the good old boy system. Like, you're not even reading this. Like, this is where
Yeah.
we can't win one way or the other. But like you said, we could get on a soapbox all that, Dawn. And
Oh,
my
yeah.
encouragement to be that anybody that's listening to this, you in a leadership role, myself as well, like, we have a responsibility to take care of our people. We have a responsibility to look after them in more ways than one. And sometimes that means going up and arguing with the people above you to go, nah, we're not doing this. Like, we're not going down this road. But a lot of people in this day and age, they don't have enough backbone to do that. Um, you know, and I think as we continue on, it seems like we're getting softer and softer in that arena. And there's too
Mhm.
many people that are not willing to stand up for their people. I like to believe I was always one of those guys that was willing to go down the hallway and argue one way or the other, but we're going to have this out. It might come out, I get spanked for it too, but by God, it's going to be worth it because, you know, and listen, I worked for a major that he had no problem. Yeah. We got in a couple screaming matches with one another, but at the end of it, we were shaking each other's hands, hugging each other's necks, and telling each other how much we appreciated the candid conversation to protect our people on both ends. There's too
Yeah.
many people that are out there that are willing to just serve them up, right? And I think if you're listening to this podcast and you're in a leadership role of any capacity whatsoever, my encouragement would be is, you know, don't be willing to, you know, sacrifice your character and morals because of your position and because you're not willing to speak up for your people. You're in that role for a reason. Speak up and take care of your people. Hold them accountable when they're wrong, but you hold them accountable to the expectations that you've already created. And if you create those expectations clear from the beginning, they'll never be upset with you when you have to hold them accountable to them.
Yeah.
But the problem is we don't do that because we're not leaders, we're managers, and we like to pass the buck and we like to blame it on other people. My mindset was for all my guys in that canine unit, I created clear expectations. This is what I expect from you. If you step outside of that, I'm going to hold you accountable. Once you're done being held accountable, we move on, right? The expectations are still there. You know the rules we have to play by. But at the same time, if you go out and do something and somebody else is trying to hang you out to dry for it, and you have stepped out of those expectations, I promise you I'll be the guy to go down the hallway and I'll fight you for you tooth and nail. We just don't have enough of that, and we need
Yeah.
more of it. And that would be my encouragement to the people that have been around here for a while is don't be willing to sacrifice your character and morals because of a position or people above you.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be respectful of your time, because I know you got a lot of things, but you've already hit on it earlier on. But it's because we wrap this up. How much has just your faith played a factor in where you're at today? I mean, from your career to where you're at now, with what you're doing.
It's played a huge role, man. I grew up in a household that, like I said, with a praying mama, it was always at the center of our family. And like I said, there's been plenty of times in my life and in my career I swayed away from that, but that was always my center focus, and it always brought me back to that. And as I got older and matured, and I matured not only as an adult, but matured as a deputy and I matured as a leader, um, and stepping away from that, if you would have come to me 5 years prior to me leaving and saying, this is what you'll be doing, I would have laughed and said, there's no way. Right. Like,
Yeah.
but my willingness to um, be open to the doors that I had no idea that he was going to open for me, has put me in a position that is mind blowing to me. Like I would have never in a million years believed this is where I'd be. There's a lot of guys that as they get close to the end of their 25 years and all they're thinking about is that retirement. And I'll be honest with you, when I stepped away from that, that was a nerve wracking thing. Um, and I chose to go the investment route, just because I'm 48 years old when I retire. I don't need, I'm healthy and willing enough to go out there and work. If I get smart and I don't, you know, that would be another encouragement thing I would say is don't wait till the very end to try to figure out what's best for your career path and your financial future. Um, but God has opened up doors for me that not only was I able to step away from law enforcement and be very successful at what I'm doing right now, but I've been able to open that door for others to step away. I've got three employees that work for me that were all full-time cops that have been able to go, yeah, I don't need to wait till the end. And they're working here, making more money than law enforcement would ever be able to pay them if they made it all the way to the chief position. Um, and that is very, very impactful to me. Like the blessing that has been, I, I can tell you the reward that I have received of the feeling of being able to help people see that there is a life outside of this profession has been far more rewarding than the financial gains that I've had, of stepping away from this profession. And it's been great. Like I'm telling you, I don't regret 1 second of it. I'm glad I stuck it out to the 25-year mark, but at the same time, if I would have felt God pushing me sooner, I would have left. I really do.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I think that, God has played a huge role in that. And I think that if people will allow him to be at that center of that, and challenge him to, I think that's the one place that God says, test me, right? Like, like my financial future was not something I was willing to sit back and stress over. I was like, okay, God, you're in control. This is what I need to do. When I was trying to decide if I'm staying in a pension plan or if I'm going the investment route, um, he put the right people in my path and made it crystal clear for me where I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I don't regret an ounce of it. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that my financial future will be very sound. I'm not the least bit worried about it. And but it's not about financial, right? I'm feeding into people, feeding into uh, that has been more of a blessing to me than any of the money that's come along with any of this. So my challenge to, anybody listen to this as we kind of close it down would be, um, put God first, give him an opportunity to prove to you, uh, what he made you to be. Because if you're willing and you're obedient and you'll listen to it, I think it may actually shock you and surprise you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Jay. I appreciate all the things that you've shared. I mean, your authenticity, your willingness to, come on here and just impart your wisdom and just kind of have a good conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, same for you. I appreciate your friendship over the years. You and I have always, we didn't get to work side by side other than that little bit of time that you went through canine school with me, but we, you know, our friendship was always very genuine, and I
Yeah.
appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that every time we saw each other, we hugged each other's neck and, took a minute to catch up with one another. And, that's what I mean by feeding into each other. We didn't get an opportunity to work side by side and be with each other on a regular basis, but you were definitely somebody I knew for a fact I could have called on and counted on. And I knew somebody that you absolutely were somebody that I called a friend. And that means a lot to me. So, I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your willingness to be obedient to that calling, both in
Yeah.
and out of the sheriff's office. And I think that, it's just It's just the beginning of it. And when this door closes and this season ends for you, there's another one that's going to open up, and you're definitely a guy that's going to be obedient and sensitive to that when the time is right. But I think you and your family will be blessed because of it, and there'll be other people that'll be blessed because of it. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
always, brother, if you need anything from me, don't ever hesitate. And anybody that's listening, you can get a hold of me any point in time of day. There's hundreds of guys that'll tell you that they'll take that phone call in the middle of the night, tears flowing, whatever they need, man. I mean that when I say that I will be here for anybody that needs it. And if they want genuine help and that advice, whatever that is, just an ear to listen, like you said earlier, somebody filling that space, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Yeah. And if somebody did, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'll give you my cell phone number directly. It's easy. 352-497-1738. I'm on social media as Jay Nix. I own Ridgeside Canine here in Ocala, and I literally, if you can't get a hold of me, you're not trying. I can promise you that. But hit me
Yeah.
up on Facebook, shoot me a text, email, whatever. You've got my personal number. Anybody that, even if you don't hear it on the number, you get a hold of Vern, you let me know. I'm here and willing at any point in time. If there's anything I can ever help you do as you continue to grow this podcast, if you decide you want to do a round two, you just let me know, man. I'm on board.
Absolutely. I think we've got, I think we got enough to talk about. I mean, I don't think you or I have ever been accused of not being able to talk. So,
That's fact. That's a fact. That is a fact. I think
uh,
that's one of those things that we can joke with each other about, but the truth is God gave us that, you know, that, uh, that character trait for a
yeah,
reason. So,
yeah,
I truly believe that's part of having a servant's heart, and I'm here for it. It ain't always easy, and I make myself available to a lot of people, and a lot of times it causes me to be really tired. But the way I look at it is there's been a pile of people that have been there for me in my life, and the least I could do is be there for somebody else. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, well, Jay, I appreciate it, and
of course,
until
man.
next
Thank
time,
you.
brother.
Yeah,
All
always. You
right,
let me know if you need anything.
yeah, and then
See you, bud.
before you hang up here, it's got a. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and share this resource with your fellow officers. The goal of Critical Aspects is to serve, support, and sustain the law enforcement professionals. So head over to www.criticalaspects.org for more resources and information. And as always, God bless and be safe.